Colèchi is a fashion research agency and collective, and our work is around humanizing fashion. So the name Colèchi is a combination of our surname, so my sister and myself, so our surname is Wetshi, and then the word collective, so essentially a collective started by us. We have different initiatives that we started. Our goal is to kind of think about how we can make a new model in fashion, or new models in fashion, and reimagine fashion and change mindsets, focusing more on kind of people, planet, sustainability. So we've got our knit club, You Can Knit With Us, we've got our journal, and we've got our Clean Fashion Summit. So those are three kind of action research things that we do that are all community facing, and then alongside that we do research for different projects with different brands or organisations. We try to communicate with people outside of the sustainable space by actioning kind of what we want to see. So for us, our knit club, so You Can Knit With Us, was really started for the reason to be able to have people who are not necessarily within this space be able to encounter and understand a bit more about sustainable fashion, and not in a direct way, because I think this space can be quite intimidating. I think naturally people think that you need to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding, because it is very scientific when you think about fibres, materials. I'm not an expert, and we never kind of put ourselves forward as expert, and that's why we come across as like this research collective, bringing people together who have all that knowledge, and obviously we're learning as we do it. It's that idea that you come to our club, maybe you've never knitted before, and when you do, you're then able to, like, you know, go through the motions of like maybe being a bit frustrated, maybe thinking like, oh, this actually takes a really long time, maybe thinking like, oh, how comes I'm not getting this? Then you slowly start to understand, you start to appreciate that if it takes me, you know, maybe 5 months to finish one thing, imagine like I've got 10 things in Zara, or millions of kind of product in a fast fashion store. How does that come about? Who made that? And it's about really slowly shifting people to start to think about fashion in a new way, so that it becomes a lot more personal. Most of the time, it is kind of people who've said like, I don't want to be in the fashion space anymore, or they kind of want to give up on fashion, but they still want to do their practice, or they still want to find a way to exist without kind of having to take on this kind of pressure, or like the natural ways that the industry operates. So I think the great thing about Colèchi is that the community has been very natural from the beginning, in a sense of, I think people who Colèchi attract, it's quite natural, and we almost feel like if you're naturally attracted to this space, then you are it.
So I stayed there. She lives and works there now.
The designers we work with for our knit club, a lot of the time it's people who maybe we've come across online, on Instagram, who just have really great brands or work that they post. And we choose kind of very varied, and we like to make sure that it's quite diverse in the pattern that we're learning, in the style that we're learning, in where the person comes from in terms of their background of ability. So it could be that they've studied knitwear design, they could have just learned by themselves, they could have learned from a parent. Colèchi Journal is essentially kind of a front-facing way for us to be able to present our research. So we launched issue 1 November 2023, and issue 1 is on fashion and farming. So in 2020 we did a project called Future Fashion Media, and we were introduced to Fibershed through that project. And Fibershed essentially are kind of a movement that are all looking at local production. And there's the Southwest England Fibershed, and we were connected to Emma Haig. And from there, that conversation started around what's this relationship between fashion and farming, what is this relationship between fashion and agriculture, and that widened our understanding of thinking about, well, there's actually so much potential in the UK, and there's a lot of farming happening in the UK, but we don't really hear made in Britain so much. So I think we were trying to find out that link, and we saw a lot of Fibershed's work where they're also looking at what's the potential of UK farms, and they're looking at how can farmers be more connected to designers. Our kind of angle was thinking about how do we, in an urban space like London, how do we kind of connect with farming, but then also what's this word regenerative, what does regeneration mean, how can we think about where our textiles come from, and then also this idea of, you know, local production, and also this kind of mindset shift when we think about fashion and food, and how can we describe sustainability in fashion. One of like the biggest kind of correlations for us was thinking about, you know, the food industry and how we all understand health, but when it comes to fashion, that's not necessarily as universal. So we decided to visit Fernhill Farm. That was the first farm we visited, and then we just visited loads more farms and started being connected to loads of different people around this space and understanding regeneration, understanding a bit more of designers and people who were kind of looking at how nature influences design. I think the mainstream fashion industry, there are loads of parts of it that are great. People love it for self-expression, the creativity, everything that comes out of it in terms of it just being an open space for people to be able to create and express themselves. But I think the issue is that it's just been kind of manipulated for capitalist gain, and that's where growth comes in. So I think it's this idea of how can we think about removing that idea of where it's been manipulated for growth and still keeping all the expressionism.